Hello, my name is Angela Jenkins, and I did Jackson Pollock for my art appreciation project. Jackson Pollock was an American artist. He was born in Wyoming, however, he moved around a lot. He had a very unstable upbringing. However, he did have a little bit of artistic influence from both his parents. His mom had some she would make clothes, and his dad was actually a government land surveyor who introduced him to some Native American customs. And his brother was another huge influence on him. He would end up following his brother in his footsteps for school a little bit. He went to the Manual Arts High School in Los Angeles, but he was expelled and eventually he dropped out to pursue art. He then followed his brother to New York City in the 1930s when he was 18. And he met Thomas Hart Benton, who was a huge influence on Pollock's life and art, and really taught him to use the rhythmic use of paint and independence to kind of do his own thing and not be scared to cross that line. The Great Depression was actually a great time for Pollock. He started working for the Public Works of Art project, which was funded by Franklin D. Roosevelt, where he was able to put a lot of art pieces around the city. And he was influenced by some Mexican muralists during that time, and he was introduced to liquid paint during that time, which would be really important with his drip technique. However, his alcoholism really began to interfere with his work, so he sought psychotherapy from Dr. Henderson, and this actually influenced his art, and he began to see his work as an outpouring of his own mind, and we see a lot more abstract themes during this time. There is also some Jungian concepts and archetypes that we would see in his paintings because of the psychotherapy he received. Eventually, he would use his talent to rent a house from Peggy Guggenheim. And this is where he was actually commissioned to make this. This is Mural 1943. It's as big as 8 feet tall and 20 feet long. And we can see he uses some warm and neutral colors, a lot of abstract themes. I really love this piece. I think it reminds me a lot of Picasso, who he was actually greatly influenced by. And this was a great time during Pollock's life where he made a lot of art. He found a wife. And during the 1947-1950s, he began to make a lot of art, and this is when he perfected his drip technique, which is where he made his most famous pieces, which is the technique he used to make his most famous pieces today. And this is the drip painting is when you take liquid paint and you drip it on the canvas. He used paintbrushes, sponges, even sticks to do this, and he was very methodical about his techniques. He liked to place the canvas on the floor and almost dance around it using the drip paint technique, and he has been quoted saying how he became a part of the painting, and it was a very spiritual experience almost for him. In 1949, he finally got some recognition. He was featured in Times Magazine, a 4-page spread. However, the spotlight was not a great place for Pollock. He began to get cocky. He made a lot of artist enemies. Critics were insulting him, and it was starting to kind of affect his self-esteem. And the public didn't like him very much. Pollock was not really a people person. In 1949, his art show sold out, but only a year later in 1950s, his art show did not sell very well, even though he had number 4 1950 featured one of his pieces featured in the show, and it's now considered a masterpiece. But this quickly led to Pollock's downfall. He continued to become more and more into drinking, and he would stay all day at bars, get into fights, and he eventually ended up killing himself in 1956. He was driving, and he killed himself and a passenger, and seriously injured his girlfriend actually. And it's really tragic because I would have loved to have seen more from him, but I loved learning about him. He was amazing. I can't believe I haven't heard of him before, and I definitely want to see his art in the future. I love how his art, when you look at it as a whole, it almost tells the story of his life, and I can see all those influences that came in through his life and how it influenced his art, and I think that's what makes him a really interesting artist.